The anti-aircraft turret has been a point of contention in the Tower Defense X community for a hot minute now, and I figured I'd throw my hat in the ring. I've seen loads of videos defending and attacking the AA turret for how it's used, and I'll say it now. I'm somewhat in between, but I lay more AA turret bad more than AA turret good. Also, by the way, this video will pretty much exclusively refer to Nightmare and Expert mode, as the events are kinda iffy and all over the place, and I don't really feel like they're worth arguing about so much. The argument coming from the attacking side has, well, good arguments that I've noted. I'll list them all out here so that we understand what we are talking about, alright? AA turret, according to the attacking side, the side that doesn't like AA turret, trivializes entire subunit of enemies by making them uninteresting and void of strategy. They believe AA turret obliterates them to a point where they're not even fun to fight against, and they're just kind of a waste of a idea, I suppose. Um, Another point is AA turret obliterates flying bosses. That I don't think many people disagree there. Like, it does. Um, AA. They also believe AA turret is fundamentally flawed because it needs to be good against air enemies whilst also not attacking ground enemies. And it also has to give your money's worth, making it so it has to destroy air enemies. It has to be really good at it. Thus, without it being the only option, it's going to completely shred them and make them unfun to play against. Now, as to my thoughts on these arguments, I think they're pretty much right on everything. They're not entirely right, but pretty much right. AA turret has the best cost to DPS to range ratios in the game by far. Top Path can cover the whole map on pretty much any map where the dead zone isn't going to eat up its entire range. And bottom path is kind of mid. It is kind of sucky, but still the top path, unless you're playing on a shitty map, has the largest range in the game besides Warship, and it has good CE. It ranges from 34 cash to 1 DPS, from 134 to 1 DPS, alongside with its high DPS, or, well, as I just mentioned, and pretty much all map range. The opposition for AA turret for most game modes is XWM, Helicopter, and Ghost. Some may claim that this opposition outperforms AA turret and makes its existence valid by showing that it's got close contention. However, I don't really think all of them do actually go toe-to-toe with AA turret. XWM is a clunky and expensive tower. It's going to take lots of early game cash to get this guy out for like any early game buzzards, and it's going to uproot your early defenses in obviously expert mode, but saying as buzzards. And if you weren't planning on using XWM, XWM's only for the early game, it's going to pretty much ruin any non-XWM tower setup for the next 3 or so waves. Mid-game, he's also pretty iffy, with some okay CE, about double the cost to DPS on AA on a lot of its levels, all the way until max, where it gets very bad and CE gets awful. The fact that he can rebuild is pretty worthless outside of Nightmare mode, because anyone with Medic and Expert is only ever going to have Towers die on the Greek Trio on Wave 30 and Eradicator Mark II+. Uh, and even then, the Greek boss fight, many of them will still die as it can't heal itself, and they're pretty brutal on that wave. He can make decent bullet DPS, but overall, it's better to just bring AA turret and Juggernaut rather than throwing a bunch of money into XWM just for a mid-early game along with it. You're paying a lot for very little. It can cover a lot of bases, but you're covering way more than just what a Juggernaut and an AA turret could do. Overall, XWM can work as a replacement, especially in Solo Nightmare, which I'll talk about later in the video because it's much different than Expert Mode, which is kind of what I'm focusing on. However, XWM just can't provide the cost efficiency that anti-aircraft turret can, and anti-aircraft turret somewhat trivializes the use of XWM as a flying turret, which leaves 2 out of our 3 remaining competitors. The next competitor is the helicopter. Helicopter suffers from many of the same issues as XWM. It's overall better, but it has some pretty identical parallels. In fact, they're so similar that I'm fairly certain that Jonathan ROBLOX himself has called it a flying XWM. It's a very expensive early game tower, costing about 3,000 to place down, and it hurts any plans of getting a non-helicopter defense up. But actually at level 0, it's not that bad. Level 1, 1-1, and 1-2 are all actually decent with about a 100 cash for 1 DPS ratio and full map range. After that though, it gets kind of rough. It has 119 to 1 DPS on 2-2, which is not that bad, but it's not that good. And it has 133 to 1 DPS on 3-2, which is pretty bad. And 146 to 1 DPS on 4-2, which is pretty bad. That's in the unspeakable range. On 2-3 it has 140 to 1, which is also, as I said earlier, with the pretty much identical value, is awful. After that though, levels 5-2, 2-4, and 2-5 are actually pretty good, all averaging 115 to 1 DPS, which paired with the full map range is viable. But it's definitely a struggle to get enough money to get from level 1-2 helicopter to level 5-2. Not so much 2-4, but still there's like a $30,000 gap. That's like 20 waves of grinding. The full map range for helicopter helps a lot though. But in my experience getting down an early game helicopter, the more you rely on it, the further back enemies are going to keep pushing, waves are going to keep coming out on top of the ones you're already fighting, and your non-helicopter defense is going to start struggling. However, that assessment might be inaccurate because for whatever reason, I think helicopter is just kind of tedious and not very fun to use, and I don't like it personally. Like, conceptually, I think it's super cool. I don't know why I don't like it. So, overall, on later levels, it can get close to providing the same use a turret can. Both have full map range, and helicopter makes up for the DPS with its own DPS output. However, on most of the early to mid game levels, it's pretty abhorrent. It's a better replacement for AA than XWM, but it still isn't really better than just bringing an anti-aircraft turret and a Juggernaut. The final contender is Ghost. You're probably seeing a lot of her in the background footage because I heard Mr. Donut Man bring her up as a good anti-air pick, and I wanted to test her out because I'd used her before once for expert, but after early game it went pretty poorly. Now having used her again, my thoughts have changed. Ghost has good cost DPS on all levels, especially 4-2. That's really good when using her drone. She works for early game, and when paired with another tower like Railgunner to deal with bullet resistant threats, she can wipe out hordes good enough with her fast fire rate, and she just overall has great DPS, great cost efficiency. There's not much else to say. She averages 110 cost per 1 DPS on most levels, and if it's not 110, it's lower. Like, it can get pretty decently low for a tower that's not gimmicky. Her range is also awesome. She's got like, it has to be one of the highest ranges in the game. In the background footage here, it's covering like the whole little huge loop there. And yeah, there not much else to say. Honestly, she kind of fits the bill. She can replace AA turret. She's good early game, she's good mid game, and she can scale okay enough into late game expert. Yeah, she can go toe to toe with AA turret while still not having AA turret's insane cost efficiency. She still deals with ground enemies well enough to make up for it, in my opinion, and not have it just be worse than Juggernaut plus AA turret. Overall, all of these towers are good contenders, and you can swap AA turret out for them. AA turret is better than all of them, in my opinion, besides Ghost for dealing with air enemies. Not to mention that AA turret is much cheaper in gold than all of them. Ghost is also notably more expensive. They're all much pricier than AA turret, and only Ghost is able to even go toe to toe with AA turret's raw output. I understand that my explanation for the first part there was pretty lengthy. It's been like 13 minutes, so I'll try to get through the rest of this faster. The point that XWM trivializes flying bosses is pretty much uncontested. No one disagrees with it. Some just think it's more of a flying boss existing issue than AA existing issue, which is kind of silly to me. Bosses like Forgotten Knight are actually pretty fun when you're just like spamming snipers, EDJs, and Johns instead of like your stupid little AA turret that you can't buff, can't do anything with. You just like place down 5 and win. Meanwhile, it's very hard, and many agree, very like monotonous to kill Nemesis, however cool she may be. The strategy against her is just spam one unbuffable unit. So I think the bosses aren't the problem here, because like fighting Forgotten Knight without AA turret is still pretty fun. But when you're forced to use AA turret, like on Nemesis, it gets pretty unfun. AA turret being poorly designed plays into the first point I brought up about how it overshadows all of the competition a lot. If it's better than everything at one thing, then the thing it's better at is super unengaging and easy so long as you bring it. It's pretty simple point. It's a pretty simple point. If you believe point 1, you believe point 3. And yeah, If something is ruining part of the game by being too good, but nerfing it meaningfully makes it worse than the other options, it is pretty obviously bad design. You can't nerf AA turret and still have it be really usable. Then you just bring something else, and it can also deal with everything else. And yeah. So you either have AA turret destroys all flying enemies and makes them kind of a pushover, or you have flying enemies be actually balanced, and AA turret is just forgotten. It doesn't work. Now I will get on to the defenders' arguments, the people that support AA turret, like it, don't want it to be changed. This is what I understand their points are. AA turret doesn't outclass other towers because it takes a whole extra tower slot when you can just bring something that does both flying and normal damage, hitting two birds with one stone. They also say that it has to be overpowered towards flying enemies to make it useful amongst the towers that can hit ground and flying, which I kind of brought up earlier. Both Also, I'm going to get a little ranty here. It might sound like I'm digging super far into them. I'm not really. I just think there is errors in this argument. I don't think it's entirely bad or wrong. I just think there's holes in this one. Both of these arguments play into each other, and I've sort of addressed them already by talking about what you can replace AA turret with. I mean, they're both kind of right in their own weird way. Laser focusing on air enemies when you can look at the greater picture and have XWM deal normal damage and deal flying damage, and majorly outperform AA turret like as a whole in the great picture of things, like knowing that flying enemies are a minor part of the game. However, I'm mainly focusing on how AA turret deals against flying enemies, because you can bring anything else in your loadout to deal with normal enemies, and bring AA turret to deal with everything else. However, the defenders, they do not believe this. They believe that bringing an extra slot is a major setback to your game, and that the entire game is bounced around having 6 loadout slots. And this is where I think their argument fails a little. Outside of Nightmare mode, there's not a single game mode I can think of that requires me to use my whole loadout. You've seen it in the background footage the entire time. I brought Hassan Trooper and Scarecrow, and my other towers aren't even meta. I could have easily just thrown AA in there and had it beam all flying enemies. I do have Ghost in there, and Ghost is awesome against flying enemies, sure, but AA is even better when you can just combine the two and have awesome entirely flying DPS and good bullet DPS. Imagine the wonders that this loadout could have done to wave 30 if I had just had AA turret. It would have been a joke. I spent a lot of the game pouring money into Ghost so that I could deal with like pilot rushes and Artemis. Artemis almost made it past on wave 30, and VX drone. Meanwhile, I could have just pumped a fraction into that, blown Artemis to oblivion before Phobius even died, and just got enough Ghosts to get me past the suppressors and X-Juggernauts. I feel like the only one who recognizes this. Everyone says, oh well, TDX is balanced around having 6 towers. No, it isn't. Nightmare and Ultra mode are the only 2 game modes that I can think of where I'd have to turn on more than one brain cell to solo without a normal full loadout. Expert can easily be done with 4, and hell, even like the Nightmare game modes, all the event Nightmare game modes, Uh, Even Elite, I could solo with 4 to 5 towers easily without having to change up my strategy, like, at all. Now to talk about the exceptions of that. Nightmare and Ultra Mode. These game modes push the gameplay to its max, or at least when you're playing solo and not playing on Castle and Reach, which is piss easy. In Nightmare mode, where there's actually a noticeable amount of air enemies, you do actually have to weigh between XWM and AA. And most of the time, you actually have to choose XWM just so you can squeeze past Alpha Predator. However, AA does show its evil face again in multiplayer. It only takes one player to bring it, and he'll destroy the entire Flying Rush wave in one foul swoop. He'll absolutely mog XWM in multiplayer, just completely showing it who's boss, and showing truly who the alpha of killing flying enemies is. So, overall, I lean towards the AA turret is bad side, but I see where the AA turret is fine side is coming from, and I agree with them like 75% of the time, even though my ravings make it sound more like I agree with them 15% of the time. Ghost fights nearly as well as AA, and even hell, AA's cost efficiency on 5.2 kind of tanks. I think it's about 130 to 1 DPS, which is kind of bad, although notably at games like super big splash damage. But overall, I think AA is a little too good for its own good, thus I lean a little bit more AA bad than AA good. Now, here's my proposition on how to change AA turret. And to change it, I must first find out its use, its role in the game. What is this actually for? And when you actually look at it, its use is obvious, yet no one actually understands it. No one, not one person who's made these videos actually gets what I think AA turret is for. AA isn't just a gimmicky tower to deal with flying enemies early. AA turret costs 11k gold. 11k. Less than Juggernaut, less than Railgunner, and less than Ghost. Yet when talking about replacements, we talk about towers like Helicopter, which costs 82k gold and requires level 85, and XWM, which costs 32k gold and requires level 60. Hell, even Ghost requires level 60, and we are all aware of how bad the level grind is if you've been keeping up with the new player experience at all. The true use of AA isn't to be this gimmicky tower to annihilate flying enemies and outperform everything else at it. I think its true use is to be a late game DPS level tower and CE that can only target flying, but for new players, so that little Timmy can beat expert mode with his operator and Juggernaut without repeatedly dying because he doesn't have Railgunner or Laser Gunner to just barely scrape by those flying enemies. My proposal is to lean into this AA turret as a catch-up for new players to get more so on the anti-flying level as the late game players are. I think we need to make it close to Helicopter and XWM when it comes to like cost efficiency and anti-air DPS. Make it less cost efficient. However, still usable for modes like Nightmare. With this, we can have AA turret be the gimmicky anti-air tower that helps new players counter them just as well as level 200s can with Helicopter. And that's my video. Tell me if I did a horrible job or not. Not really if you disagree, just if you think my logic is flawed. If you hated this video with a burning fiery passion, leave a hateful comment with my full address, legal name, and a screenshot of my birth certificate. Uh, it's my first time really, one, recording with my voice. I've streamed before, but this is my first scripted voice recording. And, yeah, this may not be my last tower commentary video because we need to look at the big picture. Like, AA turret and TDX is small fries when it comes to overpowered towers. It's a nothing burger. At its worst, it's barely harming the gameplay at all. I just play it up for the video because it's the subject matter. I'm talking about if it's bad or not. This is not a consequential tower whatsoever. There are much bigger bees that the community has not tackled. And I think it's high time we look at the real towers that are actually ruining this game, because they're here and they're worse than ever.